Thank you guys for reaching back out to Stumblin Forward and listening in. My name is Kristen Herman. I'm one of your hosts, and this is
Monica Ortega. Hey guys.
Awesome. So today we're speaking to Jeremy Silva. Jeremy was born and raised outside Chocolate City of Hershey, Pennsylvania. The Chicago transplant has been making headway in the Midwest since 2010. In 2015, Jeremy joined forces with the Scotchworthy Productions to write multiple titles, including The Rake with Sony Pictures, Skeletons in the Closet, Calent Productions, and High on the Hog, Indican Pictures. Silva has also directed award-winning short films, including Watermelon Eyes and Decline with Regrets. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeremy. How are you today?
You know, I'm stoked. I'm happy to be here. I love what you guys are doing. I love the message of the podcast. So, you know, we're friends. You know, we've been in the creative struggle together. You know, I mean, I'm just happy that something good is coming out of this time right now. You know, everybody's kind of incubating, you know, in quarantine, and yeah, we need people to talk about their dreams.
Awesome, thank you. Do you want to start with like who you are and, you know, where you're from, and besides Chocolate City, which I actually kind of like.
I hate hearing something that I wrote read back to me in that way. Like, there's nothing like more pompous than like talking about yourself, I feel like. But
nah, you want to talk about yourself. Everyone loves talking about themselves.
You know, secretly we do. We totally
do.
I think you said most of it. I'm a filmmaker, you know, from the Chicagoland area, and I've been getting a lot of, I'd say, my break into the industry with writing. I've been very, very fortunate recently over the past few years to have some films that have been produced, bought, distributed on national level, which has been very humbling, very exciting. But there's also a lot of war stories that come along with that. So just here growing as an artist and planning on taking over Hollywood in the next few years. So
yeah, come on over. So how did you get started? Like, did you always know that you wanted to be a writer, or is this something new? About how long have you been doing it?
No, in fact, it's really funny. I think like a lot of people, I mean, it depends what kind of family you grew up in, right? A lot of us, we go to school, we're told to do something practical, you know, we can kind of foster those side dreams or a love of art and whatnot on the side, but we're not really supposed to grab that by the reins and run with it, right? I feel like that's at least the message that our generation, I feel like, has gotten. I don't know if it's changing, but that's how it was. I was very fortunate that my dad's always been a dreamer, and he's been someone that I think he did not pursue a lot of his dreams. So he's always kind of doubled down and invested on me. But like a lot of parents, you know, they're still worried about what their kids do. So I didn't really get into filmmaking until later in my life. There's a lot of kids that grow up, you know, they've got cameras. You hear about, you know, James Camerons and all these folks that have been shooting stuff since they're kids. You know, for me, it was something that came later after high school and college, you know, where, you know, my dad was moving to Chicago and there was this opportunity to go. And I was right at this crux of like studying, getting into speech pathology, which is a beautiful, you know, it's a beautiful occupation. It helps people. But I just knew at the end of the day, you're going to be stifling a part of yourself if you don't pursue your creativity at any point. So that's when I took the dive and went to Chicago. I know this is a long story, but I'm bringing it back.
We like the long stories.
Yeah, well,
details.
Like in film school, like when you go to film school, I think, especially when you're in the intro classes, you're looking around, they're like, who wants to be a director? And every person raises their hand in that class, right? Everybody has this obsession with having their name in lights, you know, being that person that has the accolades, you know, the respect. And, you know, I think people realize really fast when you have to understand the role of what a director does, that becomes unromanticized very quickly, because it's a Can we cuss on this show?
Yes, you
Yeah,
can.
go for it.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
I'm like guarding myself right now.
You can definitely say any shit you like. So.
Cool. But everybody's obsessed with being a director because of, in their mind, the weight that it holds. Which again, that's even a misnomer in my opinion. But so I went into film school knowing that I wanted to make movies, knowing that I wanted to direct at some point. But what happened is when you're in a class full of people and everybody's vying for the option to direct and everybody's stepping on each other's necks and nobody wants to write, and there was this thing where there was this time in my advanced production class that, we had everybody pitching to be a director, and I'm just thinking, no matter what we do, if we don't have a good script, this shit's gonna suck. Like, I do not want to be a part of a project, whether I'm director or not, where it's just a complete piece of trash. So at that point, I just switched gears. I've always been a writer in high school, but it's never been like on the theatrical side. I've never written anything beyond short stories and stuff like that. So when I stepped into writing, it was kind of a necessity, where it was like people were just like, the stories that we were getting were just bad. The student films that we were seeing in our school were just shit. And it was just like, for the love of Christ, somebody like put your brain into the writing and maybe everybody will not hate themselves when they're done making this piece of shit. You know what I mean? Because I think everybody in this industry, like, there's so many actors that you see in films that you can tell they're dying in the inside as they are working through a script, right?
Yeah.
That was like the first draft that somebody shot. You know what I mean? So like writing for me, it was wanting, and I think that's where I always try to come from is how do we tell better stories? How do we be better storytellers? And for me, I had to just have that ego check where it's like, okay, as much as I want to direct, what's more important to me is that we actually tell an interesting story and a poignant story. So by getting into writing, it gave me the option to do that. And I was kind of shocked of really how well it was received early on. Like some of the stuff that I had wrote that I really didn't even plan on showing people that ended up becoming, I'd say, the makings for some of my first films, which was really cool. And then from there, as you're jumping up the ladders, you're trying to get in these figurehead positions, which anybody can tell you is difficult. If you dream of being a screenwriter, a producer, a director, you don't start there. You don't start there. You have to pay your dues. You have to find your way into the business. And unless you've got money, if you got money that if you want to fork up and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to put 80% of my budget down. I'm going to direct it. Okay. You'll probably do that. But I ain't got that kind of money. You know what I mean? I don't come from a family that's got that kind of money. So writing was my foray into the industry. I started getting, people were seeing my short films. Everybody's got a short film. Writing became my I would say, how would I put it? It's the aspect of my craft that I could use as leverage to go up the ladder. Really, is what it was. And there was a bigger director in the Midwest who was working on, he just got off a pretty big project, and I had assisted on his set, which anybody who's listening right now, if you get the option to be a PA on a good set, do it. Like, even bad sets, I should say that. Find out what is a good set by being on a shitty set. But being on this set, and it was like 105 degrees. We were in a barn. It was just, everybody was dying. But I was there. I was handing out water, doing whatever was needed. I met this director. This ended up being my first opportunity to write a feature film, was to write a film with him. Nice. And one of the best relationships, he's a brother to me, and brother in arms in the industry. So it's humbling to see how this works. I mean, it's very difficult in a lot of ways to progress, but you also realize how small the world is as you're growing within it, and how important it is to lead with authenticity and integrity.
And how, what script was it that you got to write with that director? Do you remember?
So that was the Rake.
That was the Rake? Nice.
Yeah. So, and that was, we wrote that in a stupid amount of time. Like, we had money, we had investors that were just sitting around, you know, looking for what the next project was going to be. And he's like, okay, cool. So glad you want to be a part of this. By the way, we're going to write an entire feature film in a month. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, anybody who's written anything, like a month is just nothing at all. I mean, you're talking, you know, writers in the guild might put out a few films a year. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you're talking a full entire feature that's ready to shoot.
Talk about the pressure. Yeah. Like, you know,
and it was my first project. and I will tell you, like, there was a part of me in that moment that almost turned it down, because I was afraid that I was going to fuck it up. Like, I was at this place where you're at a crossroads where it's like, man, like, you're given a really big opportunity. Do you take a dive, or do you potentially bite off more than you can chew? You know, how does that reflect where you are? Right. And I just remembered having this moment where I just got over that fear, and I harnessed it. I harnessed it, that anxious energy, and I used it to propel my belief of self, you know. And I took it, and when I took it, I mean, I was just like, well, shit. I mean, we got to go with it now. I mean, you can't fuck it up. You know, yeah. you just, you got to put yourself in that fire to really see what you're made out of, you know. And that. We wrote it. I mean, we wrote that thing in less than a month, actually. And, you know, well, yeah, I don't have to get into the whole Rake story yet, but yeah.
I love the idea of pivoting because you saw a necessity. And I feel like sometimes people let their ego get in the way, like you said, and then they never take that chance or make that move, not looking at the big picture that it could come back around. You may end up getting to be the director and all of those things, but, you know, starting in different areas. It's awesome. So what other things have you learned on your journey? What advice would you have for people?
Oh, man. This shit is a fickle bitch, man. You better be ready, like, to come to play when it comes to your passion. Like, nobody does film. Like, if you get into filmmaking or any art for something that is based purely out of ego, if in my opinion, you don't have something desperate within you that you're trying to share, whether that's purely entertainment, whether that's, you know, a life-changing story that you want to be a catalyst of change, you know, you're going to realize really fast how much work goes into it. And it's not to scare people off, but what you find out is just, you know, a lot of people, they, like I said, they fall in love with the concept of being an artist. And when their back is against the line and you're in the throes of being an artist, and you realize the sacrifice that is made doing this thing, you know, if it's purely an egoist want, those people, they burn out, they give up, you know, I think they really just, they cash in their chips. But for people that it is an innate drive, you know, there's just so much passion and desire there that while you're in the trenches and, you know, you're working your odd jobs, you know, or you're doing your work for basically free, you know, and you're going through this whole process that a lot of people, they just look on the outside looking in and they're like, why do you do what you do, you know? But you're standing there and you're like, this is the point. This is the journey that when you get those wins, that it's all worth it, you know? So I feel like that's a big thing is, you know, why are you getting into what you're doing? Knowing and really, I'd say connecting with doers, not talkers. I think we can all relate to that on this channel right now.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's very, you find there's people that are very intoxicating. You know, they're so good at pitching things at, you know, on the surface level of having their shit all figured out. You know, and they're really good at just caressing people's egos. And it's really easy to follow those people. But when you find out that it's kind of a dead end and these people aren't really creating anything, you know, you are who you surround yourself with. I'm a keen believer of that, you know. So recognizing those people, you know, you don't have to hate on them. You don't have to give them shit. It's just recognize the people that are propelling you forward, you know, people that you want to have around you. And that's, I'm sure you adapt that to any aspect of your life. But I think for the arts, it's just an abundance of people out there that they just don't follow through, you know.
It's really true. It's honestly one of those things that I had to learn that through my process, especially. And like, once I met Monica, who's my person, who's that, it's like, hey Monica, she's the one who, like, you surround yourself with, she just pushes you forward. And when you find that person, it's really important. So that's great advice. Really good points there. Yeah.
So what mistakes have you made that you can kind of give advice to other people? Like, hey, don't do that.
Don't do that.
don't do that. I've got a lot of those.
We all do. So.
We really do.
Don't ever create something for a trend. That is a big thing that I found myself doing once, and I learned really, really quickly. Because when you see people have success around you, and when you see people kind of tap into what's the it thing to make movies about right now, or the style, and you're trying to ride the coattails of what people are doing around you, it takes you away from your authentic self, takes you away from your voice, and what you should really, in my opinion, be creating, you know, as your main focus. And I remember seeing other people's success and, you know, making that about my lack of success. And that's a big thing that I've learned from people, is you can celebrate the successes of other people without it meaning anything about where you are.
Oh, that's so good.
It's really important. It's really fucking important that people get that, because there's so much jealousy. There's so much jealousy in this industry. And there's already, you know, that huge part of the industry, which is, what can you do for me? You know, so it's like, I just try to negate that entirely. So, you know, in this case, I was trying to really, somebody had money, and it was like, I had a project I was working on that I was really passionate about, but someone was kind of flashing a ticket in front of me, and we're like, let's do this, you know, let's do a film in the vein of quote unquote, you know, and try to get this thing sold. And why, I'm not going to tell anybody that's, you know, I mean, if that's a path that they want to take, you know, that's up to them. But to me, I feel like by the time, like, when you know how long it takes to produce content, like when you've done it, you know, and you can both attest to this, short films, feature films, whatever it is, it takes a lot of time. So by the time that your film is out, gets around to actually being put in front of an audience, that trend could have come and went. And guess who's left with a project that they're not necessarily incredibly passionate, you know, about or with. And, you know, you realize that it just came from a place that wasn't you, you know? So I see a lot of that, where it's just, it's people emulating other content because they know that there's a platform for it, not really because it comes from like, this is what I'm trying to add to the genre, or this is a story that only I can tell from who I am, you know, or that personal voice. Like, yes, you can make stuff just for entertainment, but that's a big thing for me that I figured out was, don't ever write for a trend. You know, don't ever write for temporary gain. And that leads into, you know, I think authentic self. You know, that's kind of a cornerstone in everything that I do. But when it comes to writing, like it's funny, because I still find myself doing it right now. I wrote out something recently where it was the 5 steps to writing authentic stories. And because I was working on a film, and anybody who's ever written a story before, it's like you get to this place that sometimes you fall in love with an idea or scene or something specific, and then you start writing a movie around that, right? And then you start to like maybe get to a point where like things aren't really moving forward, but you're trying to force it because you're like, oh, but this one scene, oh, or this one character, or oh, I'm obsessed with this, and it's like mental masturbation, right? And like you get to this place that you realize, fuck, there's not a story here. Like what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to like force something forward. And what I realized is that's because it's not coming from an authentic place. Like I haven't sat down and thought about who my characters are and why they are where they are now and what we're experiencing. You know, but yeah, I have that list in front of me. So the steps to writing authentic stories, and this is notes from myself, not for anybody else, but maybe you'll garner something from it.
Yeah, we get a little secret of the trade here.
Yeah, you know, for me, the first one is character is greater than plot, because I definitely write character-driven stories, but like I said, sometimes I become obsessed with a really cool plot idea. And then what you find out is that you start to write a series of scenes, not a breathing story. You know, if you're not starting with the theme, if you're not starting with the characters and their wants and desires and why, like we have nothing to be invested in. You know, you start to write something that is just the shell. It's very surface level. So that is the antithesis of what I want to write. So that's my first step. My second one is find the humanity and the depth in what you're talking about. So, you know, that's a character note. So it's like, how many times have you seen or watched things where it's like people are one level, people never change, people have no intricacies, no layers, you know? People aren't really that way, you know? And I think compelling stories come from complex people, you know? So finding that and linking that to the humanity of everything, it also makes your story more relatable on a bigger level. So I'm always thinking, where's the humanity? Any villain that I write, anybody who's just a despicable piece of shit, you know, they have to be the hero in their own story. You know, where's their humanity there?
That's actually really cool. I love that you said that, where it's the villain, because they are doing a lot of shows where the villain is like the hero, but thinking about it in your story, like the villain thinks that they're doing something worthwhile. Like they're gonna, it's like, what is that? That's really good.
I mean, nobody wants to see a movie where it's like the mustache man, where it's like, you know, it's just like, you know, I've got love for Harry Potter, I do, right? But there's times where it's like Voldemort is very much seen as like this iconic character of evil, and sometimes I feel like the movies, they don't pepper in enough things about him that we actually relate to him besides him being just like, okay, when do we get to kill this guy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm going to piss off some Harry Potter fans with that opinion. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. But it's like, we don't want to see one level people.
My favorite film and TV is when you kind of like the bad guy and you're like, why am I kind of rooting for him? But also he's real bad. Like,
Or what's masterful is when you see a movie or a TV show that you start the season or the movie and you completely hate somebody. But then over the course of the narrative, they've found a way to get you on board despite everything that you've witnessed, you know, and have that switch. That's powerful writing. Third one I put was pull from the soul. So why do we give a fuck? And, you know, why should you tell this story? I ask that question a lot to myself when I write things is, what is it about me that writes this, that makes this, what is this, like, what's unique about my perspective that I can lend to this? Because I think that that's putting a part of your soul into something. And it empowers you during the writing process. If you can't relate to your characters, if you're writing from a very bird's eye point of view, I feel like it's just harder to really get into the mesh of these people. And when you're writing really emotional, powerful scenes and conflict, and like I feel like there's got to be a part of your skin in the game, you know. So I'm always reminding myself of how I can pull from me and how I can share that with people, because there's also like a catharsis that I get from that. Number 4 was be compassionate with your process. I mean, I think everybody should hear that. I'm going to say that again. Be compassionate with your process, because not every idea is going to be great. Some of it you're going to get 2/3 of the way through and then realize it's a shit idea because it has no ending, you know, or, you know, maybe you've told a story and you're like, damn it, this should have been from this person's point of view. You know, whatever it is, whatever your situation is, be compassionate. It's a hard thing to do. Finding your, like, just the ability to get into the creative mindset is hard, like, especially with everything that's going on right now. I think stress is really a killer of creativity, and we're all stressed, right, to a certain level.
Yeah.
So just being compassionate, because some days I feel like where it's just going to flow, like the muses are going to be like channeling through you. And then there's going to be, you know, maybe a week where you just, I mean, it's diligence, right? Where you show up, you put in time. And sometimes you get nothing, you know what I mean? But it's, you're putting that time in there. I think, oh God, it was like Joe Rogan, I think, that said, that diligent or discipline beats motivation every time. And I agree with that. Like, if you only create when you're motivated, I don't think you're actually creating, like, you're not setting yourself up to have a career doing that thing. Because it is vocational. That's what it becomes, you know. But if you can create the diligence to put that time aside, no matter where you're at, and stay the course, I really think it makes a difference. So I've got 2 more. Kill your darlings. I think if anybody's ever written something and then have somebody shit on it before their very eyes, I think they can relate. Sometimes you're going to write something, you know, and, you know, maybe you're telling a story and you're in love with this scene where it's like a shootout with Nazis and, I don't know, a bunch of furries. I don't even know. Whatever your story's about, okay?
What are you writing?
Exactly, right? That's going to be my next movie. No, but like,
I'm excited.
Like, whatever, like, if you're obsessed with this idea, but it's like, you're at this place where you can look at your story and you're like, all right, man, like, I'm really keeping in this scene for me. Like, this scene has nothing to do with the story, or this character doesn't need to be there. You got to kill it. Like, and a lot of times we realize that the shit we love the most, like I said, that one scene that, like, you couldn't stop talking to your friends about, and then you write the movie and then someone's like, yeah, I don't get this scene. You don't need it. And it's like, you get really defensive, you know? So it's like, I kind of go through and I try to find the things that I'm super in love with. And then I ask myself, is this absolutely necessary? Or is this lip service to myself? You know? So kill your darlings, you know? If you don't need it, you don't need it. And I will, like, if you're not honest with yourself, somebody will be honest with you. So get ready for that shit to be dealt your way.
So how do you, because I know that, like, personally, that you dealt with something where it's like, it is your baby, but it kind of had to be transformed. How do you deal with it personally? Like,
Oh, sounds
letting
like
it
you're
go.
bringing up a personal example,
Yeah, I
Kristen.
am.
Maybe something really personal that you experienced firsthand.
It's okay though.
Yeah,
I got over it. I got over it.
yeah.
No big deal.
So I won't delve too deep in it, but as part of the industry, when you're a writer, you're not necessarily highest up on the totem pole, and really the story begins with the script. It ends in the editing room. So the writer, it's part of the job is to see the translation of your work. I was, when I was given that opportunity to write the Rake, that was kind of like an overnight sensation. We had written that film in a month and a half. By the time we hit like a second, no, I lie. We wrote that in a month, but 2 weeks in, we had our first 30 pages, and we sent it to one of our good collaborators who was shooting out in LA at the time, and he was reading it on set on lunch on the feature he was working on, and there was one of the actors that he had become friends with on the set that was like, "What are you reading?" And he was telling him, I got this new horror feature film that I'm reading from our guys back in Chicago. So he asked our permission because the actor wanted to read a little bit of it. So actor read it, he loved it, and he was like, "I really want to show this to my producer team at our production company in LA." And so we made a few phone calls. We decided what we were going to do because we kind of were determined to produce this thing in-house, keep it really small, keep it within the family. And but we were like, okay, there's a lot of interest in this, which got us excited. And fast forward, this company in LA actually tripled our budget overnight. And we started having the means to make a much bigger film than anticipated. And we really saw this as our meal ticket. Now, the whole reason Kristen's bringing this up is, as things would have it or happen, the screenplay that we wrote, LA was like, "Oh God, we love it," and they didn't want to change any part of it, blah, blah, blah. And then what we found was a very different story once money was involved. And I think the nicest way to describe it is the film got shanghaied completely. It became something completely different, and it's a tragedy. And this isn't really even just coming primarily from a writer perspective, but knowing everybody involved, the director, the producers, the entire crew, for them to have read this original story that had got them so excited about this project to begin with and wanting to do something different in the horror genre, so doing something smart. And then to find out that as the film was moving forward and all these pieces are being changed and shifted and people are being casted against character and the scripts just being set to fire. I mean, what we realize when we see the final product, it doesn't even remotely resemble the child that you gave birth to, So it's like, that's something that when that happened, when you see something that you put so much time and energy into, and it kind of morph into something that is not only different, but in all senses to a majority of people is worse, right? It's just bad. It's very bad. I had to square with that. It took some time. It took some serious time. But then I was able to see the gratitude in it. Because it had nothing to do with the producers, it had nothing to do with LA. What I could do is I could choose that experience could actually be a door opener. Whether I'm proud of what that final project became, is irrelevant if it leads to other things. And I can continue to grow and show myself. And you know, if I'm that dude that's attached to this film that people assume that, you know, the writing is me, you know, people are going to do that regardless, you know, so the only thing that you can do is get back in the saddle and continue to work harder, and show people what you're really capable of doing. So yeah, I dealt with some serious anger over that for a little bit. And
but
you
being
were there.
but being able to like get over it, being able to make sure that it's like, you know, hey, you know, just like you said, getting back in the saddle, it's gonna be hurtful, and most writing is your baby, so it's really hard.
I think you have to, and you have to be willing. I mean, filmmaking is a it is a collaborative, creative vocation, right? So it's like, it's not where you're a novelist or say you're a painter and what you're creating is mostly, I mean, there's publishers and stuff for books, but you're doing this primarily by yourself, you know, so it's you throughout, you know, when you are a part of the army that is filmmaking, like, it is a collective, you know, it is, it's so many minds being brought together to work on something passionately, and there's give and take involved in that process. And so I think you know what you're getting into, but I think everyone's going to have a scenario where, you know, you have to make room for a future where your idea is different than how you imagined it in your brain, because there's a lot of amazing evolution that can happen. You know, there are things that I've written that I've either personally shot or somebody else has shot, and then just because of the nature of the production, it's become greater. You know, where it's you were blind to certain things, and then you start to see the people that start to bring this to life, and you're like, oh my God, this should change. You know, so it's allowing yourself to be open, you know, to new possibility. That's really what it is.
Yeah. I know I sidetracked on that last of your notes, your last like writing.
Shit.
I just want to hear the last one, and then
last one, and all the time we have for today. No. So this is one that I have to remind myself of a lot. So maybe it should be the first one. So I have a mentor of mine that says, clarity first, witty second. Because I like to think I'm a witty son of a bitch. When I'm writing dialogue or when I'm writing films, you know, I'm like, you know, I like to pat myself in the back and I like to write things. Then I'm like, man, like, I love it. You know, and I think a lot of people, I'm funny. You know, people like to fall in love with their own shit. You know what I mean? And what I realize is sometimes, and I do have a lot of a poetry background. I think sometimes when I write things initially, there is this very flowery speech that I use, and it's very big, and it's like there's a time and space for that, and there is always going to be a part of that in my writing because I do have that background, right? But there's a time where it detracts and distracts. So what's more important than anything is making sure that people understand your story, right? Or your message. You know, you can adapt that to anything. So if your message is lost because you thought you were trying to be Quentin Tarantino writing a 5-page scene of dialogue with people around a table, like, then guess what? Nobody's going to finish your movie. Like, nobody's going to read that script if you lose track, you know, and you veer your audience off, you know. So it's really understanding, how do I tell this story cohesively and concisely and clearly, right? And then after you do that, then you can go back and you're like, okay, how can I put my little thumbprint on there? How do I really show people, like, you know, this is my stylistic flourish that I like to put on things.
Nice. You know? Awesome.
So yeah.
That's perfect.
You know,
So
Some thoughts?
where can we find you online, or like where can we see your work?
Oh God, nowhere. No, I need to get better at social media. I really do. I hate it personally. But I would say for film updates, I am on Instagram. You can find me. My handle is constantly changing, so I guess you just look me up by name. You know. But
That works.
yeah, but you can find. I should say for my work, you can find my films on. Let's see.
Amazon Prime. I think I
Amazon
found
Prime,
one.
Hulu, iTunes, the Crackle app.
Anything on
Yeah.
Netflix yet? Is there any, like?
High and the Hog might come to Netflix soon.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, but mostly you're gonna find a lot of Hulu, a lot of Amazon Prime, I would say.
Okay, cool. And we can get the links from you and link them below too, so that people can click on it and check out some of your work. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was awesome. If you guys are listening, be sure to head over to iTunes, Spotify, give us 5 stars, leave us a review, all that good stuff. The video will be up on YouTube. So I'm one of your hosts, Monica Ortega.
And I'm Kristen Herman.
And that's Jeremy the guest. Take
there
care.
we go. Thank you guys so much. We'll catch you next time. Bye.